Hey everyone, I'm Tricia Morris at Club Scrap, and it's time to make some really cheesy cards. In fact, probably the cheesiest cards of your entire life. I am so excited about our new Say Cheese collection. We've got a page kit, we've got rubber stamps, and we do have the card kit. That's what we're going to do right now. Turn a bunch of sheets of 12 by 12 paper and a few cut aparts into some really fabulous cards. So I'm going to just set aside most of the goodies that came in the collection. I've got my papers in order already, so I'll walk you through that, and I've got my printed instructions. Fiskars guillotine trimmer. We carry these. If you don't have one, please do yourself a favor and grab one of these. And then I also have my accordion pocket file. Now, if you don't have one of these, I suggest that you get a Post-it note or something and create 4 separate piles, one for each of the 3 card sets, and then one for extra design pieces. So A, B, C, and D, you could label them. All right, so let's get our papers in order that we'll be trimming them. The first sheet is going to be blue, and it's a beautiful blue with some nice texture on it. So when you are adhering this to your cards, make sure you're aware of which direction the texture is facing and put your adhesive on the wrong side. Next, I want you to look for the ivory plain, and make sure it's just plain on both sides. There should only be one, I believe, in your kit. After that, we're going to find 2 yellow prints. So this has the all over cheese print. Can't love that any more than I do. And then we have, let's see, a dark yellow. So you'll notice there are a couple of different yellows in here. We've got a dark yellow, a light yellow, and then a metallic gold. So make sure you grab one dark yellow and then one light yellow. Then the metallic gold. This is the nice cover weight of the metallic gold, followed by one of the blue prints. So this is like the chalkboard background, which I really love. Here we have another dark yellow, and then the other remaining blue with the texture. I'll put the texture side face down just so I keep that consistent. Another metallic gold, the other blue print, and we have a cut apart that has some larger solid images on it, and then the final one will have a lot of the smaller images. So let's flip all that back over so that the blue is right on top, and we'll begin trimming. Now, the blue and the ivory get trimmed the same way, so we can trim them at the same time. If you only feel comfortable trimming one at a time, of course, that's absolutely fine. The first thing we need to do is determine the grain direction of the paper so that later on when we fold the paper in half, it wants to fold in the direction that we are planning for. So if you hold the paper by an edge, and a lot of you already know this, and you can see how dippy or stiff it is. So you can wiggle it a little bit, see what it does, and then compare it to the neighboring side. Now this is very stiff, doesn't want to move. This is very dippy. It's happy to move. And in the instructions and the diagram, you can see I have this arrow pointing left to right. That's the way I want the paper to move easily. And then I'm just going to take the ivory and do the same exact trick. So here it's nice and flexible, there it's very stiff, so I want it dipping easily from left to right. Okay, our first cut here, I'm going to do both of these at the same time, so just make sure you're stabilizing the paper by pushing on the clear bar, and that your paper is level at the top. I'm going to find 8.5 inches, and I'll push down, and then I rotate and cut at 11. And then again at 5.5. So that just made 2 nice sized card bases, which I'm going to set aside to be scored. And then you're going to have a little piece. It's like a strip that's 1 by 8.5 right now. I'm just going to give it a little trim at 8.25 and pop these into pocket B. So that's the second pocket. And I'm sad to inform you that we have just created our first scraps, and those are pretty tolerable. I'll throw those away. And then we have the remaining strip here. This is currently 3.5 by 12. Let's go ahead and cut this at 9.5 and 4 3/4. And that gives us a series of 4 pieces that are the same. These are panels for card set A. And then we do have these 2 remaining pieces that technically haven't been assigned to anyone. So I'm going to pop all of that stuff in pocket D just so that it's there if I want to use it for decorating a little bit later on. The next sheet I need to grab is this yellow print, and I'm only taking one of them. And since none of the papers that we're about to trim will be folded, we don't care about the grain direction at this point. And the paper is, you know, can be turned in any which way, so it doesn't even really matter how it goes into the trimmer. Our first cut is at 11 3/4, and then 7 1/4. I'm going to have you rotate so this piece is now horizontal, and we'll cut at 10, 7 1/2, 5, and 2 1/2. Okay, so we created several pieces here. One of the pieces that we made is not like the other. Okay, so this is the narrowest one. That's technically a scrap, which I'll then add to pocket D. I probably will use it later. And then these 4 that remain are the same size, and those all go in pocket B. Then I'm going to take the next strip, and this is 4 1/2 by 12. I'll cut at 10, 8, 6, and 4. Okay, this larger piece, believe it or not, is a scrap, so I'm going to put that in pocket D. And then these other rectangles go in pocket C. The long skinny strip that remains, you can put that in pocket D if you like. And we'll move on to page 2 of our instructions and the other yellow print, which once again is not going to be folded, so we can just trim it any way we wish. We'll start out by cutting at 8 and then 4. Now gather up the 2 strips that you have. These are 4 by 12 right now. We'll rotate them horizontally and cut them both at the same time. So 2 of them at the same time. There actually are 3 of them, but we're only going to cut 2. Our first trim is at 10 1/2 and then 5 1/4. We just made 4 panels, and they're all going to go in card set A. And then the other 2 end cuts are scraps for pocket D. And then this final strip will trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. So here we go with 4 pieces exactly the same going into pocket A once more. And then this little end cut again is a scrap. Now we can start doing some more high volume work. So I'm going to take this dark yellow piece and check my grain. I want it dipping easily left to right. And just so that you know, the grain is actually running this way. And I'll be folding with the grain. But I put the arrows on going left to right because I think it's just a nice easy way to remember it's dipping that direction. And then here's the light yellow. I'm going to repeat the same thing. Find the grain, dipping left to right. We'll trim both pieces at the same time. All right, the first cut, 10 1/4 and 7. We're gonna make some slimline card bases here. Then rotate this piece and trim at 10 3/4 and 8 1/2. Okay, so this large piece gets set aside to be scored, both of them, and that's going to be a slimline card base. And then this larger rectangle that we have, this is 2 1/4 inches wide right now. We're going to trim this into 3 squares. So I'm going to start at 6 3/4, 4 1/2, and 2 1/4. And there I have half a dozen squares for card set B, and we did create another tiny little scrap. I'm going to get rid of those. And then this last strip can go, both of these in pocket D for decorating later if you'd like. Now make sure you pick up 2 of the next pieces. These are 3 1/4, and we'll cut at 8 1/4. So these longer pieces are for pocket B, and then the smaller ones will go in C. Lastly, this strip here, we're going to trim horizontally at 8 3/4. It's kind of hard to believe, but this is the scrap, and this is the piece we're using in pocket C. Pocket C will have a lot of pieces in it, just for a warning, but it's going to be worth it in the end. Checking grain again, I'm going to trim, again, more pieces, just like this. So dipping easily left to right. Okay, here we go. Let's cut at 10 1/4, This is a repeat of the last one. And 7. And then rotate. Trim at 10 3/4. And 8 1/2. So we got some more card bases here. Okay, we'll set these aside to be scored. And then we have this rectangle we're going to trim into a bunch of squares. So that's 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. We just made another half dozen nice squares for pocket B. And then we have the skinny guy going into D. And just 2 more teeny tiny little scraps for the circular file. All right, now we have this next strip here. We're going to cut this at 8 1/4. All right, the larger piece, pocket B, and the smaller pair, pocket C. And here is our last strip. I'll just trim this at 8 3/4. 8 3/4. This ends up in pocket D, and this ends up in pocket C. Lots of pockets, lots of filing, trimming, lots of pieces. Okay, now we're going to check, and believe it or not, grain direction needs to go left to right again, dipping left to right on this dark yellow and on this beautiful blue. So this is very opinionated paper. All right, our first cut will create a small sliver, so we're going to trim at 11 3/4. And then 7. Okay, now rotate the 7, and we're going to cut at 10 and 5. Okay, take one pair of these 5x7s, and that's going to go in pocket C. And the other pair, I want you to set aside to be scored. Then we have this narrow strip. We're going to cut this into squares again. So this time we're going to go 6, 4, and 2. So all the even numbers. 6, 4, 2. All right, then you can gather up the half dozen squares, and guess where they go? In with all the others in pocket B. And then we created some scraps again. And now I'm going to make a whole bunch of cuts. Each one has a purpose, so never fear. We'll start out at 11 3/4, 11 1/2, 10, 8 1/2, 6 1/4, and 4. Oh my goodness. Okay, all of these pieces, except for those long ones. So we've created some pieces of different sizes here. Large, medium, kind of some smaller strips, and some really small strips. All of them are used in set C. Crazy, I know. Okay, one more check of the grain. Oh, there is these skinny guys. You can put those in D if you want. Okay, grain on this metallic gold and grain on the print. Yep, okay. So once again, starting out at 11 3/4, same trimming as before. And then 7. And then rotate, and we'll cut at 10 and 5. 10, 5. Take one set, that's going to go into pocket C, and the other will be set aside to be scored. Then you have the long rectangle, which will trim at 6, 4, and 2 again. All the even numbers. 6, if you want, you can set those scraps aside right away. And then 4, and then 2. And we'll stack these all up together for pocket B again. Now, a few more tiny little pieces. So here we go. 11 3/4. Make sure I'm lined up here. 11 3/4. 11 1/2. 10. 8 1/2. 6 1/4. and 4. Okay, now again, if you want, you can do some arranging if you like. You got your medium, your small, and your super small. Pocket C on all of those pieces. I'm really proud of that trimming diagram. I think it's so cool how it ends up all coming together. And then you've got some narrow strips. If you want to save those, you certainly can pop those in pocket D. And that's like done for the regular paper. Now we're moving on to the cut aparts. Now every cut apart starts out, as of a few months ago, is 12 1/4. We need to remove the outside perimeter. So we start it with a really nice, accurate 12 by 12. So we've got cutting guides right in the corner of these cut aparts. And this is how they all work. You just need to take a second and remove the outside perimeter of the sheet. Now on the first cut that I make, I typically just cut shy of the correct spot, just so that I can see better on that final slice. Go all the way around until it's perfectly 12 by 12. And now we'll start here with the things that age well. That should be on your right. And we're going to go at 10. And then 8. And 4. Rotate this piece and trim at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. These are actually the inside of the set A card. So those large panels can go in A, and this goes in D. And then same thing with this next strip, same thing, 5 1/2, and I'm sorry, 10 1/2, and then 5 1/4. All of this goes in pocket A, and then the narrow strip is D. You have 2 more pieces here. Each one of these gets trimmed in half at 6 inches, and they're all used with our slimline cards in pocket B. 1 more sheet of cut aparts. You can go ahead and start by removing the perimeter, making it a 12 by 12. Okay, as a practice, we always begin with the narrowest strip on the right edge, so that falls off first. And our first cut here is going to be 11 1/2, and then 10, 8 1/2, 7, and 3 1/2. Now rotate. I'll keep the implements of cheese on the right. And let's cut this at 9, 6 3/4, 4 1/2, 2 1/4. Okay, so all of these tags and things that are the same size, those go in pocket A. And then we're going to take this entire piece here. Let's see, I'm going to grab my scissors and just kind of do a real rough cut so that I can file these appropriately. So the cheese spreader here, that's going to go in pocket A, the cheese slicer in B, and then the circle here goes in C. Next strip here, I'm going to place it again with the dark blue area on the right, and we'll start out at 10 1/2, and then 9, 7 1/2, and 6. Okay, the 6-inch piece, all 3 of those will go in pocket C, as will all of these little strips, blue strips, go in C. Then we've got this long strip. We're going to cut numbers divisible by 3. So that's 9, 6, and 3. Okay, gather up these 3. They all go in pocket C. I told you there's going to be a lot going in that pocket. Okay, so the next one, it's got a bunch of squares on it with a little cheese cutter here on the left edge. So put the sliced on the right, the little piece, and we're going to cut every 1 1/2 inches. So that's 10 1/2, 9, 7 1/2, 6, 4 1/2, and then we'll end at 3. So this guy, I used it in set A. We're going to repeat now I'm just going to leave all these other squares and keep adding to them. So again, every inch and a half. So we'll start at 10 and a half, 9, 7 and a half, 6, 4 and a half, 3. Once again, put this guy in A and then gather up all those little 1.5 inch squares, and they're all going to go in pocket B for those slimline cards. Then I believe I ended up using this in set B as well on the inside of one of those, so I'll just throw that in there. Okay, that's all the trimming we needed to do for today, so I'm going to set this aside and swap it out with my score pal. Everything that you've set aside is in a pile in the order it landed, so I think that's how I'll tackle this. And therefore I'm going to begin with my blueprints that I have here. I have a blueprint, and this is 5 by 7. I'm going to start out with the plain side facing up on this one, and I'll score at 1/2 inch, and then 6.5 inches. So one on each end. Then I'll flip it. And now I'm going to score at 2 1/4 and 4 3/4. Okay, yeah, that should work. Okay, now when you have a plain piece, it doesn't matter what size. So I'm going to score at 1/2 and 6.5. But I still want to do the flip. So I'm going to flip that bottom to top, and then 2 1/4 and 4 3/4. Okay, now this one again has a right side and a wrong side. So I'm going to place it super smooth side facing up and score at 1/2 inch, and then 6.5. And then I'll flip and score at 2 1/4 and 4 3/4. Here's my last one, and it's yellow plain on both sides. So I'll go at 1/2, 6.5, 2 1/4, 4 3/4. All right, now these will all be added, believe it or not, to pocket C. Now my next cards are the 7 by 8.5. This is going to be the slim line. So I'm going to place the base vertically in my score pal, so you can see the 7 right here. This is measurement, right side up, and score at 3.5. And then the gold here, 3.5. The light yellow at 3.5, and the dark yellow at 3.5. All of these are for set B. Finally, we've got our 5.5 by 8.5. This is nice and easy. Just score each one horizontally. So in other words, you'll see the 8.5 here on the right at 4 1/4. And this is with the texture side facing up. This will be set A. Next, I'll turn to page 3 of my instructions, and I can see the cards we're about to make for set A. So the best thing you can do at this point is pull everything out of that pocket, and I like to sort things out sort of by size. And also, one of the first things you could do is go ahead and fold each card base in half, and then burnish that score line with a bone folder. Next, I'm going to arrange those card bases. So I've got a navy and ivory are going to be horizontal, and then I've got an ivory and then a navy or blue vertical. So now I have all these panels for the outsides of the cards, these little other things. So I'm going to take these larger panels, and each one is a print. So I'll just layer one yellow print on top of each card base, and look how they all fit perfectly. Then I'll take the ivory and alternate blue. So if it's a ivory card base, it gets a blue panel, and vice versa. Then each one gets yet another cheesy print, which I love, love, love. And then we have our 2 horizontal sentiments. That's what cheese said. And the 2 vertical ones. You're so cheesy going. Now for the inside, I hope you like this cheesy card. And then I'm going to do the rest. Today's your birthday, and I hope it's great. And then for these, I believe I used this little piece there, and then the 2 of these on this one. So all of the pieces out of pocket A have been distributed. I think I'm going to make the 3rd card so I can just show you how I use the ribbon. The other ones are a little bit more straightforward, but I'll of course will show you how these work, but essentially they're all the same. So let me just stack these up and set them aside. If you really want to stay organized, take one of the A2 envelopes and just take all of the leftover pieces from the remaining cards and put them in the envelope so that they stay together and they're ready to go for assembly. Now, one of the things you can do right out of the gates is prep your tag shape, and you can just take a scissors and simply snip off the ends, or if you really want it to be accurate, you can use any kind of a grid ruler. This is one that was actually included in one of our kits. It's a mini, and I'm going to line up the first dash line on the ruler with the printed angle of the tag. That's going to give me a 1/8 inch border that matches the borders on the other sides, and then just remove that triangular shape. Again, you can use scissors if you want. If you are going to use scissors, I suggest using a long blade so you can make the snip all in one cut and you can see exactly where you're going. The other thing you can do is take a any kind of a 1/4 inch, or this is the crocodile on the 3/8 inch. Let's see, what is this? 3/16 setting, the larger hole that is, to remove the hole in the top. At this point, life is good. I can just simply take the various panels and we'll do some nesting here. So here's the folded card base, which is ivory. And then I will nest the cheesy panel onto the base, centered top to bottom, left to right. Then the dark blue panel. And again, another cheesy panel. If you wanted to, right away, since I have it here, you could add the panel to the inside of the card. How easy is this? Oh, it just adds so much, doesn't it? And then, let's see, we have this little tag to deal with. I'm going to show you a really simple way to take care of this. You can take the satin ribbon and thread it onto the tag from the front to the back. And then run the tag down, or run the ribbon down till it peeks out from the bottom, okay? Then just wrap this around and you can trim the ribbon off just so that you can kind of see it wrapping successfully around. Grab a piece of tape and secure the end to the back. And then all you need to do is just pinch the ribbon together horizontally, the long way, that is, and cut at an angle toward the tag. And now you have this nice little cheesiness going on there. I love to use my foam adhesive circles, so I'll slice them in half so I can make them go extra far and add them to my tag. Usually I do the corners, and then I might do one kind of along the edges here, like so. And sometimes I'll use a tweezers just to snag the ends. It makes it go so quick, but these little pull tabs are so handy to have. The tweezers just makes it go even faster. As if you haven't been able to figure out by now, I'm not all that patient, so I like to make up all these little shortcuts and then just center that on there. It's already lovely. One last finishing touch is to take a piece of this blue ribbon, which has a metallic weave through it, and then just make a knot directly in the ribbon and cut the edge at an angle. At this point, I do prefer to use a glue line. It just seems to work really well. If I add it to the ribbon, burnish, and then peel away, and at that point you can kind of pinch things around the knot if necessary. Just avoid touching the glue line as much as possible and add it to the card. It just kind of looks like you've done a lot more work with this kind of ribbon attachment, and it just always looks so professional and beautiful. Now, taking a look at the other cards in this set, I did a couple of other fun things. So, of course, card number 3 and card number 4 are essentially the same, but do you see the little dots that are in the background on this white panel? Those came from the washi tape that comes in this kit. So you'll start out with a tape around the washi tape. So make sure you remove that red dotted tape, and then that will help allow you to access the pieces. And if it really works well, you're going to pick up some, and then you can pull them off the line and add them to the panels, and just do that arbitrarily, however you want to do it. And here's one I've got started already too. So you can just, peel one of these off. This is kind of supposed to be here. Got a double thickness, and then peel that back, and then you can add your dot. And I chose these dots, I just thought they were really fun because they sort of mimic the holes in cheese, and they're the color of cheese. It's just, it's my happy dotty place, right? And it just kind of gives you a festive background here on these cards. One other thing too is your kit came with some yellow shell buttons. I love these buttons. They're actual shells and then they're dyed. It's really pretty. So I used some wax cord to sew this onto the panel before I added it to the card. You'll also notice that I used a corner chomper. You can also use a corner rounder. I only used the 1/4 inch setting, kind of liked that feel on this, and added some foam adhesive to mount this at an angle. I did that after I wrapped the double panel here with some ribbon. So you just have to be thinking about what order are you assembling these cards, and make sure you add your layers and your ribbons appropriately, and the button as well. You don't want your button to be sewn from the inside. You can see how I fussy cut the little cheese knife here and it glued him into the inside of the card for a nice finishing touch. The second card is exactly the same, but I wasn't able to add the dots, so I just added the dots to the ivory panels. Let's move on to card set. We'll begin by taking everything out of the B pocket. Try to organize it in piles by size. Once you get things sorted out, go ahead and fold each slimline card base in half on the score line, and as a general rule, always bury the bump of the score line. So this is the bumpy side, this is the indentation. You want that bump to be on the inside of the card base. We'll be making 2 vertical cards, and we'll start with the light yellow, and then the gold, and then the blue with the dark yellow. So light yellow, gold, blue, dark yellow. Make sure you can see everything here. Okay, now we can distribute the largest and second largest panels. So let's start out with the dark yellow panel, then the light, then the gold, and then the blue print. Now, does it have to be like this? Absolutely not. I'm just making an effort to try to interchange as many colors as possible onto the cards. Now, on the horizontal cards, I did go ahead and add, at this point, a horizontal blue strip and then a horizontal ivory strip. That, of course, is completely optional. Then you have a series of squares, and they're all kind of paired up by color. So let's do our best to kind of distribute these. I'm going to go with the blue on this one, and the gold is popping up next. That's going to go on that horizontal card with the bright yellow base. I'm going to do the yellow here, the light yellow here, and the dark yellow on this one. Okay, now I have a series of squares that will nest. The blue print is going to be on this vertical card here, and you're not going to see much of it, so it doesn't really matter. Then we're going to do the gold over here on this vertical, the blue on the first horizontal, and again, you see the distribution of color happening here, and then the dark yellow on this last one. Okay, last but not least, we have our sentiments. So I think the cheese is going to go on horizontal, so cheese, you, I think they got a little bit out of order. So it's cheese, wine, and you. And then sliced, shredded, and baked are the vertical. Sliced, shredded, baked, cheese, you, and in my pocket, there's just gotta be a wine. Wow, tons and tons of little elements there to add here. Now finally for the inner, we need a vertical sentiment. How about love comes in many forms? And then things that age well for these. Okay, so I'll do the vertical card, just one of those, because they all are assembled the same way, and just kind of show you how I did some finishing touches. So these will stack up, and then I do have the slimline envelope, so I, oops, well, we'll be kind of close. Kind of close. Then we can take the whole pile and insert it into the envelope, even if it's maybe vertical. Okay, so we've got a lot of assembly to do here, and it's basically just adhering things on things. And I'll just try to impart a just ever so small amount of wisdom in the process. So I'm starting by just putting adhesive on 2 panels at once. You notice top, middle, bottom. And you usually can eyeball something like this for placement. Just make sure you're equal margins on left, right, top, and bottom. Now for a larger review like this, I always like to use my ruler with the 0 center. So here's the 0. Whenever you're using our ruler, just make sure that you can read it properly. If it's upside down, the measurement won't be as accurate. So now here I have a 1/2 inch of reveal at the top and bottom and a 3/8 inch from left and right. But using the ruler to help me find that is going to give me a much better and much straighter placement for these pieces. Now at this point I can add these 3 squares, and what I'll do here is just like a quick little dab on each side. You don't have to go crazy with a lot of adhesive, especially if you're using this type of ATG. I can't live without my ATG. And now I'm just matching left, right, top. Then I'll do left, right, bottom. And then I can center up this one pretty easily, and it looks really good. Okay, now I have 3 more squares to adhere. So again, I think I'm just going to do it like a diagonal pass. It's plenty of adhesive for what this is for. And center that on. At this point, if you would like to pop dot these, you can certainly do that. Otherwise, just use your favorite adhesive again. We've got sliced, and just center that. Shredded. Oh, shredded is next, or you can use baked, whatever order you want them. And baked. I like the contrast of the colors. All right, and then we can do the inside of the card. You can use some of those washi tape dots. You can reach down into your assortment of items here and pick something out. If you wanted, you could maybe add this little print. I guess I did this on the other one. I'll put that on the right edge here, and then add the sentiment. Oh, love comes in many forms. Have a great day. Isn't that fun? Okay, so if I close this up again, I'm going to show you my little adhesive trick with the pretty little twine. So I'm using a needle-tipped applicator here with my tip ready to go, hopefully. And I'm going to use the paper to act as a guide for the tip to make its way along the edge of that panel. This is the cheesy panel. Now, if you wanted to work one section at a time, you could. I'm just going to go all the way around. The glue won't dry that quickly if I get to it right away. Then I'm going to take this, make sure I have a nice fresh end, and I'm starting at the upper left corner here, and I'm going to place this onto the glue. And I also did this with our regatta. We just released a regatta collection, and we did have some tricolored. It was red, white, and blue twine, and I used it in a similar fashion on some of my greeting cards. It was really fun. Just kind of wind that all the way around, turning the corner. It works just fine. This wet glue is perfect for the job. Once I reach the starting corner, I can take my scissors and just snip it off. The glue will prevent it from fraying. At this point, I can then make a knot. So I'm going to do the 2 bunny ear knot, the simple kind of a bow, crisscross, bring the loop through the hole, and pull to make a really nice flat knotted bow. Just decide how big you want the little loopies. Trim your tail. Then we cover the seam of the initial knot with our little bow. Now this is completely optional. You could just do without it. Like if you're concerned about mailing things and having extra postage kick in, don't worry about it, then just leave it off. And I'm just gonna lay that right in there. And that is as sweet as can be. I love this. I love this card. So much fun. And the other cards in the set, as always, go together very similarly. So let's review the final samples. So here is, I think this is like the one we made together, except you can see on the inside, it's got a little more action. I got some washi tape dots. I've added this little guy, right? Just fussy cut that, not a lot of detail. Didn't make a big deal out of that. And then a second card is just like it. Fun, fun, fun. Here, I took the other 2 buttons. So I used the first 2 of the yellow shell buttons in card 1 and 2. So this is set B, card 1 and 2. I reused the remaining 2 of them, and I just added it to the wine before I I think maybe one or two of the panels I sewed it on before adhering. So again, with this, it's all about the order that you put things in, just to make sure everything is the way you want it. But here I added the second button, also very sweet. What's happening on the inside here? All kinds of fun things. There's that cut apart that we added to the folder. Fabulous. Okay, let's move on to card set C. As always, we'll begin by removing everything from pocket C. And there's a lot, just so much stuff in there. It's absolutely crazy. So again, my recommendation is just before you try to tackle anything, just sort out this big mess and into piles of like-sized items. Phew. Okay, I have everything all sorted out, and now it's time to deal out some card bases. Now, the easy thing here is that every card base has two pieces. So we have the non-scored gold is card 1 with the scored gold. Okay, so that's the first one. Then we have non-scored blue with the texture, not the print, with the scored one. We have non-scored bright yellow with the scored bright yellow, and we have non-scored print with print, or with the scored print. Okay, so those are the 4 cards. Now we have a ton of pieces to distribute, so I'll just walk you through them one by one. And we're not going to start out with the biggest one right away. We're going to start out with, there's a series of narrow strips, narrow panels, and then even narrower ones. These strips match the width of, or the height and width of the scored areas, with a little bit of a reveal on each side. So I'm going to add one wide blue here in the middle, and then I'm going to do a skinny blue on each side. And then even from the super skinny, that goes on these outer edges, okay? So then on this one, I'm going to do gold. So I'm going to find one wide gold, and then 2 skinny golds, and then 2 really skinny for these little 1/2-inch scored areas. If that's just too annoying for you, like you're like, nope, sorry, I can't do that size piece, then leave it off. It's just something that you can do if you want. Now I'm going to go with print on this bright yellow. So one wide print. I'm going to do skinnies, 2 skinnies. That's easy to find. And then one wide print here. And I'm going to do bright yellow. So one wide, 2 skinny, and then we can add our little 1/4-inch leftovers. You still have some more panels, but at least let's get these kind of initially placed. Next, we have some yellow prints. I'm going to center those. See how they fit right into this spot here? Okay, that was easy. Then I have a rectangle. These are smaller rectangles. I'm going to put a printed rectangle here, a bright yellow on this one, light yellow on this one, or so the darkest yellow, then light yellow, and then gold. Then each one is going to receive this little printed strip. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just keep bearing with me. Each one will receive a round scalloped edge tag. And now we have some sentiments. So I'm just going to rough cut with scissors so we can get these sentiments distributed as well. And we'll do this, the fussy cutting in just a moment. So don't worry, be happy. And don't worry, be happy. That goes on this one. And the other, it doesn't matter, right? Sorry you're feeling blue. We're going to go on those if we wanted to match them. Whatever color is on the top, you're going to get a great big rectangle in the same color. So big rectangle in gold, print, bright yellow. Now this panel that's right here, this horizontal small panel, whatever color that is, add one of these wide ones to the pile. So I'm going to go dark yellow. I'm going to go, well, in this case, I'm going to go gold. And in this case, I'm going to go dark blue. Now for these larger panels, they're going to go on the inside of the card. And do you see how these, when you have the triple panels, I'm going to match that. So the dark blue will be with this one. The gold will be here. The print will be here, and the bright yellow will be there. Oh, we are so close. I'm going to go this deep yellow with Hugs and Cheeses, and then a bright yellow with Hugs and Cheeses, the printed with Thinking of You, and a gold with Thinking of You. And now I think we're ready to make a sample. Let's start just by making one of these cards at random, and then you can do the rest. All the assembly is exactly the same. So we'll begin with this scored piece, just working independently. Make sure the bumps of the scores are on the outside and the indentations are in the middle. And I can simply add a little adhesive to this panel and place it in the center. Now there's that scored area and it should fit perfectly left to right, top to bottom within that scored area. Then I have another skinny one to go right next door. And the other skinny one to go next to that on the other side. Nice and easy. Now remember, we do have these narrow strips. I find that the best way to deal with these is to use our bookbinding glue from the needle tip applicator again. I mean, you're probably tired of hearing me say that. If you have not yet gotten your bookbinding glue and a needle tip applicator, you need to join that family with me, okay? So it's just the most wonderful way to adhere things without being messy. It's economical, and you can get into all those little small areas. It's so handy. Okay, so this is going to just be glued. And the reason I'm using this and not my regular adhesive is because the ATG that I use is a 1/2 inch wide. So there's you know, a lot of different purposes for a lot of different types of adhesive. I use many different kinds. Okay, so then I'm going to put this in the center here. It's already taking beautiful shape, right? Okay, so I think maybe now we can focus a little bit on the inside. So I'm going to do a little bend up. So I'm burying that score a little bit. It doesn't have to be a full 90-degree bend, but you can see we make 2 valley folds and then 2 mountain folds out of the way we've scored this piece. And then I'm going to take my bookbinding glue again and run it along the left edge of the card within that 1/2 inch scored area that we just created a tab with. And I'm going to line this up with the card base. So edge to edge, all lined up beautifully. Fits nice. Okay. Now I'm just going to spend a second on the inside of the card. So I'm going to fold this all the way back. We have 2 pieces, or you should have 2 pieces then, that will cover this inner area, and they're in 2 different colors. So we have this larger panel that's going to be added vertically to the card. But before I attach it, I just caught myself. I'm going to adhere the skinny one first because I want it to be centered top bottom with matching margin on the right, and then this will go in next. And it might just be right up against the piece you adhered. Okay, very good. Now, if you would like, you can take a corner chomper and round some corners. I'm using the 1/2 inch setting on this one. You could use any setting you prefer. And if you're new to this, each side has a different measurement. So this is 1/4 inch, this is 1/2 inch, depending on which side of the punch you use. Okay, we can also just nest this as long as we're at it. That's fine to get that out of the way. Sometimes it's nice to have fewer pieces to work with, right? This can also nest across the middle of your piece here. Nice. Okay, then we have our circular sentiment. So I'll come in with my scissors and try my best to cut right through that yellow line in there. To cut a circle with a small scissors like this, open it as pretty much as far as you can manage and squeeze while turning. Rather than making a lot of shortcuts, a longer cut is better and will give you a smoother line. That makes me happy. Now, Jacqueline and I had a long conversation about how to make these as big as possible so we could have the art, but we still had to compensate for the hole and that whole thing. So what I would do if I were you is there's just enough space for you to punch a hole into this. So I'm going to put adhesive on the back of the circle and grab the tag and make sure the tag is exactly vertical with the hole in the top, and then the same for the sentiment. Make sure it's straight up and down so that that space in the middle is right at the top. Then I can come through with my crocodile, turn it over, let me use the larger hole, and punch my hole in the back here. Pretty good. Nice. Now I'm going to come in with some of this blue ribbon. I'll just snip off a piece, thread it through the hole, and like we did this before, just bring that around to the back. I'm going to tape it. That's it. But, I mean, that's not it. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. This is fabulous. Okay, now we have a lot of yardage of this beautiful gold ribbon. So what I'm going to do is make, I would call ribbon for a cause. I'm going to do a little twist in this ribbon, and I'm making sure that the grain of the ribbon is wrapping itself around the direction I want to go, and just like twist it in. And I'm going to check the length. So I want to not exceed the height of the card. And one advantage, well, one of many advantages of working with a double-faced satin is that there's really no right or wrong side to this. So now I have my little panel for the middle of my card, and I'm just going to place my brown ribbon right onto it, checking length top and bottom. Then take some tape. I don't know, that piece might be a little big. I don't want it to extend past anything. I'm just going to secure that like that. Okay. Now all I have to do at this point is flip this over, and I've got a couple more foam adhesive circles here. I mean, I have access to these, but I just always like to make them go as far as they can. And remove the backing. Again, I do like to use my tweezers. Just pull those off, quick and easy. Okay, now I'm going to center this on my little showcase area here. Love. Now be really careful. When you add adhesive to this next section, you have to make sure that you never exceed the score lines on the middle of the card. So if I just flip it over, I can see exactly where those score lines are. Oh no, my ribbon. There we go. And then when I place it here in the center, when I lift up the card, this will pop away. Okay, so if you have adhesive here, the functionality of your bay window card won't work as well. Now when I open it, all I have left to do is add this. Now be really, really careful. You need some more foam adhesive for this process. So I'm going to give myself a couple more halvesies. Apply adhesive to the back of this, but only in the center. So you could do one side and the center, but you cannot have any adhesive on this left edge. If you do, this card will not work as we'd hoped. I just say just do it in the center. You don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now I center this on the area of this one panel. Okay, then when you want to display the card, that little 1/2-inch flap tucks behind the inner panel, and it stands up nice and straight. It has this beautiful bay window effect, and then when you open it, you can handwrite your greeting in there. So you're going to need like a bright colored pencil or maybe another liner. You could just grab something from the pocket D to put in there to write on, whatever works for you. A lot of us have white or silver or gold pens nowadays, but isn't that a neat card? Let's take a look at all the others. They're basically the same. So we made sort of a version of this one together. Here's another one. This one is Sorry You're Feeling Blue, and I had the same exact ribbon process. And you could also bring the blue ribbon around to underneath. There's plenty of ribbon to go around in this collection, that's for sure. And they all just construct the same way. The important thing is to remember about don't apply adhesive to the back of this panel, and don't apply adhesive to the left edge of this panel. And if you use your foam adhesive, then it's popped up enough and it makes it easy to tuck it in and shape that bay window. Isn't that fun? I really love this card structure, and I have it pretty close to where you're making everything out of just one sheet of paper. You know, all the pieces come out of one sheet of paper, which is pretty cool. Okay, everybody, I think that wraps up our card making session because, of course, as always, all of the remaining pieces that we've organized in this set are constructed in the same way. And again, if you've missed any of that distribution of all the pieces, just consult the picture that I have in the instructions. It will be very helpful to you. And I know there are a lot of pieces there to make sense of, but when you finally do make sense of them, you will no longer feel blue. You will be happy. I hope you had a good time. Cheese makes me really happy, in case you haven't guessed. So if you like these cards and you want to make pages to match, don't forget about our Say Cheese page kit. The prints are the same, the ribbon and some of the embellishments are the same, others are different, and the instructions are completely fresh and new. So I will see you over at the Say Cheese page kit workshop. Be happy. Thanks for joining me.